Welcome back! Apologies, haven't made any videos for a while, and that's because I've been traveling recently for work. I'm back now though. I finished my final exam and I passed first year med, so yay for that. But moving on now, I'm going to be doing some videos mostly for the people that want to be getting into med next year or applying for medicine next year, because those of us that have finished medicine for the year probably just want to relax and not do a bunch of study. That being said, some of the videos that I hope to make, things like introduction to immunology and that sort of stuff, will be useful for you for review once you do get into first year, and even people that are going to be coming back for later years and just want a bit of a refresher. For this video, I'm going to be answering some questions about applying to medicine, in particular how important is volunteering experience and some other things related to that. The first question is volunteering experience absolutely necessary when applying to University of Sydney medicine? The short answer is no. The longer answer goes into what you have to do when doing the interview for medicine at the University of Sydney. So the University of Sydney traditionally has several stations with different interviewers, but the questions are always ethically based scenarios. So they sit you down in the room, they give you a little prompt information that says you're in a hospital and a doctor says something inappropriate to a patient. Later on in the elevator, some other people overhear it. What do you do? What do you say? Blah, blah, blah. And then they ask you following questions for that. What ethical principles are important? What are the issues? Yada, yada, yada. And so at no point should they ever really ask, what volunteering experience do you have? That being said, they do sometimes mix things up. They may ask a question that they haven't done in the past. For instance, one year they asked, why do you want to do medicine? And they hadn't really done that before. So it is good to be prepared for unusual questions, but for the most part, they shouldn't directly ask you that. That being said, it's also good to be able to back up anything you would say in those answers to ethical situations with real world experience. Going back to the doctor in the hospital situation, perhaps you would have said that you would approach the doctor, talk to them in private about what they did and why they did it, how things are going on in their life, because maybe they've been stressed, etc., etc. So that's fine, but if I were an interviewer listening to that, I would probably think, yeah, that's a good answer, but would you actually do it? And the way that you convince them of that is that you throw in some real world experience. So you might say, because in the past I've had friends or colleagues that have done some things that seemed a little out of character and inappropriate. You give a specific example. It's one time when I was working at, I don't know, Kmart, my friend Jerry said blah blah blah, so I took him aside in private and I calmed him down. I asked what was going on, I understood things from his point of view, yada yada yada. In other words, if you've got volunteering experience, you can use that to back up things that you might say you would do in an interview station. Another reason that I like to throw in personal experience is specifically because the University of Sydney doesn't usually have stations where they ask you about yourself, your values, your strengths, weaknesses, experiences. So when I went through my interviews, I was somewhat of a challenge. Also, just to help my answers, tried to throw in personal experience every single station with every single interviewer. Firstly, to back things up, like I said, but also because it gave them a chance to get to know me as a person in the very short amount of time that you have with them. The next question is the same as the first question, but what about other universities? So volunteering experience, again, I don't think it's crucial for any university, but they may ask directly about it. So at ANU, for instance, they have a number of different stations where they get a bit creative in the way that they ask questions and the questions that they ask about. You can also have panel interviews, which are more like a traditional interview where you're much more likely to get a question like that. They'll ask things like, why do you want to do medicine? What are your strengths and weaknesses? The sort of typical stuff you would expect. But there are also universities where they require you to submit a portfolio. I never applied for any portfolio universities, but my understanding is it's a culmination of lots of your experiences, basically like a resume, but you can put down things such as hobbies, you can put down things such as work experience, volunteering experience. Let's tackle each of these one at a time. First off, with the panel interview, if you're asked about volunteering experience, you can answer that firstly with volunteering experience if you have it. If you don't have it, you can explain why you don't have it. You can give, assuming you have a legitimate excuse, maybe you are an elite athlete, so the time that you spend outside of your academic studies, you actually have to spend training, and you can still work in a bit of, I get to help people with this experience. And so that's the other thing that you can be doing. Just because you don't have volunteering experience doesn't mean you don't have the traits that they're looking for in asking that question. So in volunteering, they want to see that you're empathetic, they want to see that you're compassionate. So you can just talk about a real world experience that shows those things instead. So you say, unfortunately, I don't have volunteering experience. I've been quite full on with my studies trying to get into medicine, as you would assume, but also I'm an elite athlete. I'm very into swimming. I'm not, just an example. And so I spent a lot of my spare time doing that. When I finish up my classes though, a younger class usually starts up, so I make sure to stick around a few minutes to try and give them tips and see how they're all going, because I really hope that they can get as much out of swimming as I get out of it. And so there you're showing people, or the interviewer rather, that you've got the traits that they're looking for in volunteers, but you just haven't had the chance to get that experience yet. As for portfolio universities, I kind of hinted at this already. It does look really good if you've got volunteering experience, I'm sure, but if you just don't, you haven't had the chance to get it, maybe you haven't had the desire to get it, that's probably another problem. But let's say you haven't had the chance to get it, I'm sure you've spent your time doing something. So that could be work experience, it could be hobbies that you're really passionate about, maybe you're an elite athlete like I said, maybe you're not an elite athlete but you're really into certain sports for fun and also for personal growth and being around friends. Things that you pursue in your own time, arts and crafts, etc. Those are all sort of things that you can pop in there. To my knowledge, they don't have a required volunteering section, but like I said, I didn't apply to portfolio universities. When you do apply to them, they will tell you what to put in your portfolio, they will give you some ideas, and if they don't, a great website you should check out is Paging Doctor, where you'll be able to ask questions of people that have actually gone through those university application processes and get the answers firsthand. That being said, it's really not too much of a challenge to get volunteering experience. I think some people assume that they've got to be doing this regular, ongoing, once a week, 1 hour a week or more of going to some place and doing the same thing each week. It's not really the case. You can get one-off experiences, and especially now that we're in the summer break where people aren't studying as much, you can just spend a day or even an hour on a weekend just going and helping out with a particular activity. When I visited a friend in America, we actually did this for fun. We did some boxing of food for elderly people, and it was a good chance to just do something I hadn't done before, as well as meet some new people, something different. And so what I'd suggest is that if you haven't had the chance to do any volunteering and you can't really do ongoing volunteering experience, then probably you should try that out. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of applying, but because you will actually get skills in interacting with people that you're not really used to, getting outside of your comfort zone, things that are really important once you actually get into medicine, and probably much more so once you're actually a doctor. And you're going to have to deal with people from different walks of life, do things that you maybe aren't too comfortable with, but still be professional. The next question is, do you have to give a resume or a statement when applying for med school? So I mentioned already that some schools require a portfolio, and so this will have a lot more written aspects to it and more so the sort of resume statement thing you might be expecting. But as for places like University of Sydney, University of Queensland, ANU, etc., those kind of more standard places, I say standard, but the non-portfolio universities, they will not require a statement, they will not require a resume, and most of them don't require a portfolio. So when you're applying to them, they take into consideration a combination of your GAMSAT, your GPA or WAM from university, basically your grade point average, and also your interview score after your interview. They combine those and they then add them up into some sort of score which they use to rate you against everyone else that applied and did an interview. Different universities will weight these aspects heavier or lighter, but some of them might just not consider, for instance, the GAMSAT at all, or some might not consider the GPA at all. For Sydney University, for example, they do look at your GPA, but only that you get above a pretty low cutoff score. I think it's 5 out of 7, which is pretty easy to achieve. It should be quite achievable if you expect to get into medicine. And if you get above that, it's no longer considered in comparing you against other students. So once you get above that, you get an interview with the university, you will have your GAMSAT score and your interview score, and then compare your combined score against other students. Other universities like ANU, for instance, will weight your GAMSAT, GPA, and interview score equally and use that to compare you against other students. Then there are universities like Queensland University. It's the only one like it that I know of. It only looks at your GAMSAT score, so there's not even an interview. You just score high on the GAMSAT, you're probably going to get in. And then, like I said, there's the portfolio universities, so they might weight your GAMSAT, portfolio, and interview, for instance. Each university is different and you have to look into them. Next question, is it important to put down your volunteering experience? Like I mentioned with the portfolio universities, I think it is beneficial to put that down, and if you haven't got the experience, I already mentioned that you can get it pretty easily. If you are quite busy though, you can always explain the other experiences that you've gotten and why those have stopped you from getting a volunteering experience. Now, with other universities where there isn't a portfolio, is it still important to, for instance, work your volunteering experience in? I think it helps. It definitely helps if you can throw that in there if you've got the experience. But if you don't have the experience, like I said, you just back up your answers with other things from your life. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have experienced working in an Aboriginal healthcare centre just to be able to talk about Aboriginal health. You could watch documentaries, you could talk to people that have done it, and then you can back up your answers with that, because it's still real world experience. Just because it's not your personal experience doesn't mean you're not backing up your answer with something from the real world. The next question is, should I have health experience so that the assessors know that I'm interested in medicine or in health, for instance? The answer is absolutely not. I've also interestingly been asked the exact opposite question. Somebody that had done physiotherapy was wondering if they should refrain from putting that information in any of their answers and talking about that. And the answer, maybe a bit confusingly at first, is the same. Absolutely not. So regardless of whether you've got health experience or you don't have health experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're better or worse off. So for the people that don't have the health experience, for starters, there are lots of people applying to medicine that have a background in biomedicine. So they did their undergraduate degree in biomed, and that's very useful once you get into medicine. You've kind of already seen a lot of the stuff you're going to study, and so it gives you a boost there. But then there are also many people that have applied after doing an undergraduate degree in science, arts, commerce, etc., law, and so these people don't have health experience. There are even courses for applying straight out of high school, and I would very much doubt that people that have applied straight out of high school have any experience in the health sector. So no, the experience isn't necessary, but what you do need is to be able to show that you have an interest in health. So that could be from a personal experience, whether that's maybe a time that you had an experience at a health center or with a doctor or somebody, a different healthcare worker that was really important to you, or maybe it's because you had a family member that was affected by a health condition. As for the people that have got health experience, I think it just backs up that you've got a deeper understanding of what different roles require. Just make sure that you are very confident in your reason for switching from your current health experience to this new one. For instance, if you're switching from physiotherapy to medicine, you might have the reason of, I want to be able to help people in dealing with a wider range of issues rather than just musculoskeletal. There is an added benefit of having been in the health sector already, which is you've probably got a lot of experiences to back up answers that you will give in your interviews. But like I said, the people that don't have that experience, you just have to back it up with other things from your life or from talking to people that have that first-hand experience. That's everything that I have for you this time, so thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe if you haven't already, comment if you've got any recommendations, requests, etc. And until next time, goodbye.
Swear they holding on my feet, but they ain't not